Okay, so Céad Míle Fáilte to everybody here today, and in particular those that have travelled to be here. There's actually one person here all the way from France, which is fantastic. Okay, the pursuit of truth is the essence of civilization, and the freedom of nations depend on it. As such, truth, freedom, and democracy are the essence of the civilized Western world. We, as sovereign people, are standing at the precipice of another invasion of Ireland through the medium of mass immigration. We're watching silently at the destruction of our communities, the breaking down of our family, the removal of our religion, culture, and the dismantling of our state. We are not allowed to have an opinion, or indeed an objection to any of it. We did not choose this path for ourselves, it was chosen for us. Our replacement and the dissolution of our state has been visited upon us by the European finance capital and an anti-Irish government in favour of global financial gain. Extreme social liberal ideology is the flavour of the decade, so extreme in fact that the lines of right and wrong, truth and lies are constantly blurred by the sensationalising nonsense of the left in the mainstream media and the scramble for money and control. Ireland is no longer a democracy, but a socialist state where intimidation, rape, murder, terrorism flourish in our cities and towns. Our people and the vast numbers of Islamic migrants are mere pawns in a game of thrones that will change the demographics of our country forever. Our extreme leftist government refuses to discuss or even acknowledge the demographics, betting and border security matter. The socialist paper, People Before Profit, reported on the 27th of February the government's Strategic Communications Unit paid for sponsored news pieces to appear in national and regional newspapers, promoting Ireland 2040, which could not include negative or critical content. Varadkar's government used taxpayers' money to generate positive stories about its national plan. His Strategic Communications Units, plural, contacted journalists from the independent group of newspapers to write good news stories about a plan delivered with glorious spin that promised more hospital beds, schools, broadband, and better transport connections. This type of manipulation is part of Varadkar's record. Just before he became the leader of Fine Gael, Leo Varadkar used his position as minister to launch a publicity campaign against welfare cheats. He spent €165,988 of the Irish taxpayers' money and was photographed in the national press holding a placard which stated, "Welfare cheats cheat us all." It was a cynical exercise designed to win over the Fine Gael grassroots for his leadership bid. Subsequently, it was revealed that there were just 11 cases of identity fraud in Ireland in 2017. And the top civil servant in the department, John McKeown, admitted that the advertising campaign was a mistake. By the time the admission was made, Varadkar had won the leadership of Fine Gael, 50 to 57 votes. 47 TDs never turned up to vote on the day. They were all sick at the same time. But that was the very point of the campaign. It was all about image making rather than reality. If Varadkar had checked the previous Comptroller and Auditor General's report on deliberate fraud, he would have found out that it amounted to a mere 0.2% of the overall welfare budget. The use of public money to generate positive news storm over the national plan takes PR manipulation to a new level. But it also provides an insight into the cosy relations between the media and the political establishment. Virginia Hale of Breitbart on the 24th of February wrote, "Project Ireland 2040 has been slammed on social media as a pyramid scheme to enrich investors by adding consumers at the taxpayer's expense." Project Ireland cannot work for many reasons, mainly because people are tribal and tend to migrate within their own groups. Small numbers of immigrants will assimilate into a host culture, but the numbers that Mr. Varadkar is planning to invade us with will not, because Sharia does not accept or coexist with democracy. It can't, or with a Christian population. Now, we've seen a prime example of this in Britain, and my mother's family all live in Britain, where miles and miles of territory from central London into the suburbs is inhabited by the Islamic culture. If one were to venture into these streets, one would imagine themselves in Calcutta, Istanbul, or Beirut. Similar surroundings exist in Manchester and Birmingham, and indeed all of their cities statistically show quite substantial growth in the demographics of Islamic culture. Many of the people in these vast areas do not accept or allow or welcome British people to enter their streets or pass through them. Basically, in the end, it just becomes a question of territorial conquest. In relation to this and immigrant crime, David Coleman of the Irish Mirror reports that on St. Stephen's Day, 200 African youths ran through Henry Street in Dublin in a mass brawl, which broke out between two African gangs in the city centre, namely Henry Street and Mary Street. Dublin Live also reported it. The St. Stephen's Day bargain hunters were terrified as a prearranged fight erupted on Henry Street and Mary Street. According to reports, 5 Irish people were assaulted as the mob clashed with the public. A sales assistant working in the area said shoppers were terrified by the scenes on the street outside. At one point, 90 to 100 youths came running up the street together, shouting at the same time, filming themselves on their phones. The staff locked the doors of the shops for their own safety and the safety of the customers inside. A Garda spokeswoman said, Gardaí responded to the incident on Mary Street around 6:55 on December 26th, when 200 African youths fought each other with baseball bats and knives and injured 5 people. They did not disperse when the Gardaí arrived, despite being directed by the Gardaí to leave the scene. 1 youth was arrested and taken to Store Street Garda Station. The Irish taxpayer is paying for the support of African Islamic criminals and Middle Eastern Islamic criminals. Rather than what the budget was intended for, which is the support and care of the Irish people. Public health risk is a serious concern. Now, the American Society for Tropical Medicine performed a retrospective review of 180 sub-Saharan immigrants and screened them for infectious diseases at an international health centre in Barcelona. 72.8% presented at least one pathogenic infectious disease, and reported that in the absence of prompt treatment, which represents a high cost to any public health system, they were a high public health risk for transmission. The following infectious diseases were found: malaria, schistosomiasis, I don't know what that is, filariasis, intestinal parasites, tuberculosis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV virus, and syphilis. The median age of the subjects were between 15 and 49 years old. All were male. 76% were 18 years old. 131 out of the 180 were infected with at least one pathogen of the HIV virus. 39 presented with 2 other infectious diseases. 9 presented with 3 infectious diseases, and 5 were infected with 4 infectious diseases. And that 180 subjects are just a drop in the ocean compared to the numbers that Dr. Death plans to bring in. It is impossible to glean from Project Ireland 2040 how the Irish nation could ever benefit from any of its policies, because in reality, it's impossible and is highly unlikely for us as a nation that we would even survive it. The glowing spin and sheer arrogance with which it was first put before the nation is astounding and insulting. And it mimics a bedtime fairy story read to 5-year-olds. How can he even imply it when he can't provide houses for the indigenous people that already live here? 62 people have died on the streets of Dublin in the past year. That is more than 1 per week. 12,000 are still homeless, sleeping in doorways, bed and breakfasts, Simon communities, and cars. 3,000 of those are children under 14 years of age. Government ministers are the landlords of some of these properties that the homeless were evicted from. One instance reports 2,800 apartments owned by one landlord who stated that the market had reached such high levels that the return on rental property had escalated by 300%, but that he wasn't going to reduce the rents just yet. 52 people have been made homeless in Kilkenny, and 100 more have been served with notices to quit. This is to make way for the incoming Muslim asylum seekers for whom the local authority want to build a mosque, a school, a restaurant, and a halal shop in Kilkenny. The Muslim community already living there say they're confident that they can raise the 6 million in costs. Now, how would a relatively small community of asylum seekers raise €6 million? It would take a hell of a lot of benefit events to raise that, and outside of themselves, who would buy the tickets? The answer, the Irish government on behalf of the Irish taxpayer, or a wealthy Muslim investor. Diversity is another word for weapon in the context of mass immigration, which has been tried and tested and does not work, never ends well. It has been tried not only in Britain, but in America, in Italy, in Germany, Sweden, France, and many countries around the world. In fact, the proof that it isn't working is Angela Merkel herself, who has now adopted a U-turn on mass immigration and has deported 80,000 people from the German state. Sweden have also deported 30,000 immigrants in the last month and are continuing to do so, and many countries are closing their borders. We look forward to doing the same. As an Irish sovereign nation, we have every right to protect our families, our communities, and our home. This is a war of a very different type, in which not one single shot has been fired yet. But we have been down this road before, and we have won. Winter limini agus an clár, bhí olamh agus bhí réig ar asheráig.